extend a warm welcome to our speakers and all of you for joining us from across the Caribbean region. Thank you for taking time to be a part of this important dialogue. Now let us begin by introducing our Pro Vice Chancellor of Graduate Studies and Research, Professor Audrey Henry Lee.
Good day, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege to welcome you to the launch of our new 1UE research cluster on resilience through entrepreneurship. I congratulate Dr. Indiana Minter-Coy and her co-chairs for the establishment of this important cluster. Entrepreneurship is very important to us, and we see this cluster as helping us to achieve 3 UWI strategic goals: alignment, AL3, pursue commercially viable projects to increase revenues from commercial operations; agility, AG1, restore financial health to the UWI; and perhaps most importantly, AC4, increase the quality and quantity of high-impact research. The School for Graduate Studies and Research supports innovation and entrepreneurship at the UWI, aligning with the strategic goals just mentioned. In 2023 to 2024, we hosted several events designed to develop the capacity of the UWI staff to pursue research projects with commercial potential to increase revenue from commercial operations. These included the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Boot Camp workshop held between February and April 2023, which equipped participants with the knowledge of intellectual property necessary to support commercialization of innovative projects. We also hosted the first in a 3-part workshop series entitled Pitching for Investment. The goal of the workshop was to introduce participants to the key components of an effective pitch to investors. 55 members of the UWI academic staff participated in the workshop, and evaluation forms indicated that the workshop was well received, with clear consensus being that participants were looking forward to parts 2 and 3 of the workshop series and would be attending. Our activities also included a series of workshops with focus on various aspects of research enhancement and skills development. These included grant writing workshops aimed at equipping researchers and graduate students with the skills necessary to secure research funding. These sessions covered essential elements such as structuring of the proposal, understanding funding agencies' requirements, and crafting compelling narratives. As part of a radio series to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the UWI, we conducted an information session and contributed to a newsletter article on the status and plans for the development of innovation and entrepreneurship, I&E, at the UWI. The program emphasized the need for developing I&E at the UWI, the governance and organizational structure for its development and operation, current initiatives being conducted, and I&E plans for the future. We also finalized the text for the comprehensive brochure in which we articulated strategies for enhancing research productivity at the UWI, which will be disseminated across all UWI campuses. The document identifies 3 distinct but not mutually exclusive categories of research that the UWI must strive to deliver on, and which require different evaluation criteria when academic staff are being assessed. These are research towards disciplinary advancement and international recognition, research towards regional development, and research towards innovation and commercialization. As a step towards developing these different criteria for these 3 categories that I just mentioned, we are currently collaborating with Professor Ian Hambleton of the George Allen Chronic Disease Research Center on the development of research matrix at the UWI, which will identify appropriate ways to measure research productivity given the multi-purpose goals of the UWI agenda. We also organized and implemented a 2-day online coaching session aimed at selected grant writers at the UWI to further increase our capacity for winning externally funded grants. We have launched the One UE Faculty Mentorship Program, which has matched Professor Emeriti with mentees from across the UWI faculties. This initiative fosters professional development, provides valuable mentorship to young faculty, and reinforces the university's commitment to creating a supportive academic environment. So we are very pleased that this cluster has been launched, and I look forward to the outputs that will emanate from interdisciplinary collaboration among academicians, stakeholders in business, technology, government, and non-governmental partners, students, and community members to tackle questions that demand innovative solutions. For example, how can entrepreneurial practices build resilience in underserved communities? And importantly, how can we ensure that resilience and entrepreneurship are accessible and inclusive, empowering everyone to contribute and benefit from development? I anticipate that the members of this cluster will answer these questions and other relevant ones through peer-reviewed publications, seminars, conferences, new courses, and programs. We at the School for Graduate Studies and Research are committed to supporting you. We will continue to support our student and staff researchers with capacity building opportunities, our search for research grants and scholarship, writing of grant proposal, and grant implementation. Through our One UE research clusters, we encourage interdisciplinary collaborations and the provision of opportunities for both emerging scholars and seasoned academicians to engage in transformative work. So, ladies and gentlemen, this cluster will help us rethink conventional paradigms and embrace resilience as a strategy for sustainable growth for our Caribbean region. As we officially launch this cluster, let us celebrate not just the launch of another new cluster, but the opening of a dialogue, a strengthened partnership with internal and external partners, and a shared commitment to build resilience through the power of entrepreneurship. I wish to express, as I close, my deepest gratitude to everyone who has made this launch possible, the conceptualizers, and of course my staff at the SGSR, led by the very capable and energetic Mr. Neil Panovich. I also thank you, the online audience, for joining us for this launch. We appreciate your online attendance and engagement. Thank you, and I look forward to the transformative impact on our Caribbean regions that we will and must create together. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Professor Henry Lee. I now introduce Dr. Priscilla Bahau, who is a co-chair of the cluster. She will introduce her other members in turn, and we look forward to her leading the presentation on behalf of the research cluster. Dr. Bahau, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Panovich. Allow me to share my screen. I have a presentation which I will show you. So good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, attendees, to my fellow cluster team members. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege to be here this afternoon to be part of the inaugural launch of the One UE research cluster entitled Resilience Through Entrepreneurship. I first want to take this opportunity to really commend the School of Graduate Studies and Research for supporting our efforts in making this launch possible. Not to mention that the list of activities and programs and strategies in which you are vested in throughout the years. Our Pro-Vice Chancellor just mentioned a couple of these activities, and I was just taken back in terms of how much you've been interested and invested in the common theme, which we'll be talking about today, which is entrepreneurship. As Ms. Panovich just said, my name is Priscilla Bahau. I'm from the St. Augustine campus. I belong to the Faculty of Food and Agriculture. I lecture entrepreneurship. And today, I am stepping in just a little bit for our chair, Dr. Minto Koy, who will join us shortly. But just to give you a brief overview about what we will talk about, we will first begin the session by discussing the importance of entrepreneurship as a specific field. We will also talk about how we got started, why we got started, what is our strategic intent, where we are in terms of our existing work and our action plan as it relates to future work. I now hand you over to our co-chair, Dr. Abika Medin, who will take us through the rest of this presentation. And then after, you will get a chance to meet our esteemed members of this cluster. So Dr. Medin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bahal. Before I actually discuss how and what is entrepreneurship, let's first look at the why we are doing all of this. So in the Caribbean, of course, governments are responsible for development of national policy for development. Nonprofit organizations are generally the ones who assist the social sector for development, and business is really supposed to help in terms of developing the economy. However, what we have noted through our research is that in most cases, government policies and whatnot are developed based on what we consider to be flawed or lack of real information as to what is happening. Social sector organizations, in most cases, they suffer from a lack of resource capabilities, unable to really do what they are supposed to be doing. And of course, for those who have been paying attention to what's been going on in the economy, businesses have not really been successful in the sense that we have a decline in GDP overall. Compounding all of that, when we look at what's going on the outside, there is currently a decline in social and economic situation, which means that there's need for relevant information to support the necessary policies, which means that there's relevant information to provide to business as to what is needed to develop markets. And there's need to assist social sector organizations as to move from being a dependency to being self-sustaining. And that's actually was the rationale for the formation of our research cluster. So let's go to the next slide, Dr. Bahal. This is actually a recent publication by the World Bank. And we as a Caribbean and Latin American, we are not actually doing well. In fact, our growth rate in comparison to the rest of the world is the least, in the sense that we are just expected to have a minor increase in growth in comparison to the rest of the world. So it is really a really depressing, quote unquote, depressing situation. And to a large extent, these are the drivers for why we are doing what we are going to be doing. So let's, next slide. So what is our intent? So we do believe entrepreneurship is the foundation for development, both for social and business development. And in order to be able to do that, we believe academia is very important to bring in the relevant knowledge, advice, and research to guide development. And therefore, with the relevant research and development, we can, in fact, influence institutional policy. We can influence what is happening in the business and social sector. And therefore, when we develop business, sorry, thanks, Daniel. So business actually will have real information as to exactly what is happening in the market. And not only would we be looking at startup, because startup is just one portion and would not necessarily have a huge positive impact on the economic environment. But we need to develop existing business. So our extent in terms of entrepreneurship is not just in terms of startup, but also with regards to intrapreneurship. How do we develop internal organizations? We need also to look at social development. How can we move our nonprofit organization instead of being a dependency to actually contribute to the economy and to GDP? How can we improve community development, and environmental development, which means that we need to develop and move the social sector organization to achieve social development. We need, therefore, to transfer or to move social sector organization to operate as social enterprise. And this is not an impossibility. It is happening right here in the Caribbean. In Jamaica right now, Jamaica has recently adjusted their GDP calculator to include the contribution of social sector organization to the economy. In the international era in Europe, social enterprise are in fact key contributor to the economy. So why can we not do this here in the Caribbean? And therefore, this is actually part of the intent with regards to what our research cluster, we need to develop the relevant research to guide policies, to guide social development, to guide business development. And through our research, we hope to address all of this. Let's go to the next one. So now let's understand what entrepreneurship is all about. So sometimes when we think about entrepreneurship, we generally think business. Our intent from research, the research cluster is not simply about business development. We believe we are actually leveraging the foundational understanding of entrepreneurship, where entrepreneurship is really about the individual. Entrepreneurship is really a mindset. It's really an opportunity-driven mindset that resides in the individual. And therefore, these individuals, if they want to operate in the business context, they can choose to start and grow an existing business, a new business, sorry. If they are in an existing organization, there's opportunity to improve processes, come up with new product and grow that existing business. With that same entrepreneurial mindset in a public sector organization or social sector organization, we can do the same. And therefore develop social-based organization, develop governmental-based organization with that entrepreneurial mindset. So with this understanding of entrepreneurship is what we as the research cluster is actually going to develop and demonstrate how this could be applied both in public sector, social sector, and business sector. Next slide. And as Dr. Mintoy Coy is right here, I will now pass it over to the chair of our cluster, Dr. Mintoy Coy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Medine. Good afternoon, all. It's an excellent point that I'm coming in, which is now to talk about the cluster itself. So we've heard about entrepreneurship, the relevance of entrepreneurship for resilience and development. And so really that has, that's the driving focus behind the decision to form this cluster. The vision statement of the cluster that we've come up with is to be the Caribbean's leading research body in entrepreneurship, globally recognized for driving and delivering impactful research that informs policy and practice and enhances sectoral, national, and regional resilience. So even as we're a regional body, covering all the UWI campuses, and going beyond the UWI campuses to include the University of Guyana, as well as our industry representatives that are represented here, we really intend to be a body that is recognized and becomes recognized for the quality work that we will produce. In terms of the mission statement itself, Priscilla, okay, thanks. So the Resilience Through Entrepreneurship Research Cluster focuses on advancing Caribbean socioeconomic and environmental development through robust research and strategic partnerships. By addressing critical research gaps, RTE fosters sustainable initiatives, supports diverse entrepreneurial ventures, empowers communities, and provides actionable policy recommendations to build an inclusive and resilient Caribbean entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we've taken, of course, the approach of being all-encompassing in our view of entrepreneurship, because it's really in a context where we're dealing with grand challenges, which means that it's not possible for any one sector to tackle these issues on their own. It means that this all-encompassing approach and view of entrepreneurship is important. So no one sector, no one individual gets left behind. Understanding again that entrepreneurship is an activity. It's also a mindset. It's about startups. It's about existing businesses as well. In terms of the work really and our objectives as we move forward, we aim to address some critical research areas. When we as researchers look at the work that's available in other contexts, we realize that there's a lot that's happening on the ground in the Caribbean, but there's a dearth of accessible material that other researchers, that policymakers, and that practitioners can utilize. And so we will be focusing on startups, SMEs, as forms of commercial entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, corporate, sustainable, diaspora, and international entrepreneurship. And we aim to engage in associated practical exercises. And this will be done via our mission and mission-related projects, consultancies, educational activities, and capacity development. So ultimately, we want to be able to produce work that will drive policy, that will drive practice, and will drive research ultimately, with the intent being to increase the quantity and the quality of work that's available across the region. So what have we accomplished so far? Dr. Medine, who just spoke, the reality is a lot of the work that we've done so far originated from her research. Others among us, and we'll hear from the others shortly, have been involved in doing research around entrepreneurship for some time, but sometimes it takes that one little thing, that one little nugget that actually brings people together more. And so I had the fortune of working with Dr. Medine to complete her DBA thesis. We actually produced a book from that. And that book is titled Social Entrepreneurship Strategies for Social Sector Sustainability. And we encourage you to try to access that book as well, which really represented a key published resource that researchers, policymakers can access when they speak about social entrepreneurship in the Caribbean. It's the first baseline study on profits organizations. And it explores how not-for-profit organizations can attain long-term sustainability beyond grant funding. And that's a part of the resilience and the sustainability of which we speak as well. From that book, we actually moved ahead to form a cross-sector research group, a cross-sector committee, the Social Entrepreneurship and Enterprise Development Steering Committee, which we started in Trinidad a few years ago with the intent of bringing to life a lot of the ideas and the views in this research. And that's important because, again, we're not just doing research for research purpose. We want there to be practical, implementable ideas from the work that we're doing. So we formed this cross-sector committee with the intent of driving social entrepreneurship in that context. From that, we've developed a number of tools that we're currently fine-tuning. And as we go through the next couple of years, we want to develop the models and the tools that can be utilized across the different sectors, including our transformational theory of change model. I won't go into that. I'm mindful of time, so I'll jump ahead. We've developed that transformational theory of change pathway as well. So when we look at the kind of work that we aim to do moving forward, we spoke about entrepreneurship in its various forms. So we intend to move ahead in terms of publishing a book that's in addition to the one that we've already published. which aims to kind of capture and develop that transformational theory of change model for the social sector across the Caribbean. We will also be doing a number of publications specific to this individual project. So we have recently submitted a paper to the Multinational Business Review on this, the book that I just spoke about. We've just gotten a contract from Palgrave Macmillan for that. And of course, some of us here are researchers, so we hear research or perish. But beyond that requirement to research or perish, we also understand that there are many points that we have information, we have knowledge that exists, but it resides in the minds of our people. And so for other researchers who want to use the models, who want to use the tools, they're at a disadvantage. And we've all experienced that ourselves, whether we're practitioners or academics. We've experienced the dearth in published accessible material. And so that's why a huge part of our work will be around publications. So if we look at, Priscilla, you can jump ahead 2 slides if possible. So we will be having that book that we have that's due for Palgrave Macmillan next year. But we're also doing a number of other research projects around not just social entrepreneurship, but commercial entrepreneurship. So Priscilla, for instance, is developing a body of work around minority entrepreneurship and around sustainable entrepreneurship. And in the 2 streams of work, a number of publications will come from that and have already emerged from the work that she's been doing. And we'll be partnering on some of these initiatives as we move forward. There's also work on diaspora entrepreneurship with a list of publications that have already emerged from that stream of research. There is going to be work that we're doing and already doing on corporate entrepreneurship. So for instance, one of our colleagues, Paula Singh, has done work on business groups across the Caribbean. That's what her DBA is on. And so we're doing some projects emanating from that as well. How corporate entities actually thrive, survive. So we're looking at corporate entrepreneurship in that sense. We also have a number of projects around international entrepreneurship, around startups and MSMEs, including around talent management and acquisition in SMEs, and around the use of technology in SMEs. So I'm being very brief here. To the left of each of the slides around the different projects, you'll notice that we have a number of publication houses or journals that are attached. And these are outlets that have already accepted our work. We have contracts with them in one form or the other. And so we will be moving towards ensuring that when we speak about the Caribbean, you know, some see the Caribbean as a dark space in terms of the amount of research that's available. We want to plug that gap. We want to make sure that there's quality work, quality published work, that it exists for policymakers, researchers, whether you're at home in the region or anywhere else in the world. And so in terms of our action plan, you'd have heard a little of that through some of the things I just discussed. But just to indicate that the research work that we're doing really encapsulates the gamut of entrepreneurship. So we have work around international entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, sustainable entrepreneurship, diaspora and migrants, minority entrepreneurship, which somewhat coincides as well with that idea of diaspora and migrant entrepreneurship. We also have SMEs and startups and corporate entrepreneurship. Ultimately, these are separate lines of research, but they all connect, they all interact. Of course, it's around entrepreneurship, but beyond that, there are synergies across the different areas. And as we go through, we really welcome, we invite participation, we invite interest. And obviously, based on the presentation, it's clear we're coming to you today not to start the work. We're coming to you here today to let you know of the work that we've already started and to really enlist you and enlist your support in moving ahead with this research. I know there's, it would be easy for individuals to go and do their own research in the space. But we also recognize the importance of collaboration. We recognize the importance of collaboration, not only in academia, but also collaborating with those who are in the trenches, those who are practicing and walking the talk, and actually then helping us to reflect on what we write, the validity of what we write, the ability to implement some of the recommendations that we make. And so we're really looking forward to what this can look like as we move forward. So we did put together what we see as a brief overview of some of the work and activities that we want to undertake for the next couple of years. By no means it's not complete, but it's mainly to give you an insight into some of the things we want to do moving forward. So of course, for our first year activity, we really want to go back to that emphasis that we've had around, and that initial startup around social entrepreneurship, because we do recognize the value of social entrepreneurship. We recognize its relevance in terms of building resilience across the Caribbean. Again, we want no one left behind. And so a huge part of the work that we'll be doing is carrying on with that initial work around the theory of change and the transformational theory of change, used in Trinidad and Tobago in the first instance as experiences and cases that will drive our work. But as I've said, we do have partners across the Caribbean, including Guyana. We have persons on the platform here today who are not in the Caribbean, who may be in the diaspora as well. So the reach and the breadth of the work that we can take on is significant. So we aim to do some data collection and analysis around this transformational theory of change model. Of course, we will be moving towards, making assessments and recommendations from the research in terms of how we can improve social sector performance and operations via social entrepreneurship across the region. We have our book that we intend to complete. The Minority Entrepreneurship Project already has some links and activities thanks to Dr. Bahal, including some papers that she'll be working on. We'll also be moving towards looking at SMEs and startups, as I mentioned, in terms of talent management and acquisition. And we know as a small developing region, talent management and acquisition these topics haven't always been considered sufficiently within SMEs and startups. And so we want to look at that to see how they can manage talent, how they can acquire talent, to look at technology as well. We hear a lot about technology and SMEs and startups. We want to see what that looks like for the Caribbean. We want to look at things like the motives for internationalization among our firms, given again that link between internationalization and productivity, and the fact that many of our businesses across the region are in fact SMEs. We want to develop some competence and some knowledge around that sector. There's international entrepreneurship as well. from the perspective of our large businesses as well as our SMEs to look at their motivations for internationalizing, to look at their performance and accomplishments. And beyond that, of course, I mentioned our corporate entrepreneurship, looking at the strategies and so on. Now, much of that work that we've started already and intend to continue in our first year, we will develop that even further in our second year. And at that stage, we hope as well to move more towards or networking and or advocacy. It's important to note too that as we develop this body of work, academia is often accused of being an ivory tower. And so one of our aims really is to ensure that the work that we do gets into the community, gets into the relevant spaces to really have an impact. And so part of our advocacy, part of the work we'll be doing is towards ensuring that it doesn't just stay in the books, but it takes form. I see Dr. Brandon here as well, and she will vouch for that. And I'm sure part of the rationale around building the group as we have done is to make sure that we're not all researchers, we're not all academics, but we do have stakeholders that will help us to ensure that the work is relevant. They'll ask us the questions and they'll give us the pointers and the feedback. One of the challenges that many researchers have across the Caribbean sometimes is actually accessing cases and data to inform their studies. So we hope to be able to do that. And then ultimately, we as a small region, and I've always maintained that yes, we are small, but there's a lot that's happening in terms of business and management research globally. And we tend not to feature. And it's not that we don't have something to contribute to the development of research and practice in these global spaces, but we haven't done enough documentation to ensure that we do feature in these spaces. And so it is our hope and our goal that as we do this kind of work, we're able to influence and direct theory development across academia as it relates to entrepreneurship in all its facets, and international business and management in all its facets as well. So I'm really, really grateful, thankful for this opportunity from the Office of Graduate Studies and Research and through Prof. Audrey Henry Lee in this wonderful initiative. I am going to pause now because I've spoken a whole lot and I want us to meet some of the dynamic researchers and practitioners that we have on our initial committee. I'm going to ask them, if possible, whoever is here, just to open their mics and just a brief and quick introduction of themselves. Dr. Brandon, I see you, so you can begin.
So hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for including me in this cluster. I am Marcia Brandon, and I am the co-founder and Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Caribbean Center of Excellence for Sustainable Livelihoods. We're based in Barbados. We work in the region and outside of the region with MSMEs, youth and women. And we are working with startups and scale-ups and mostly impact entrepreneurs. So we're helping entrepreneurs to understand the triple bottom line, sometimes the quadruple bottom line. But the most important thing is we're focused on sustainability. We're focused on innovation. So this is good alignment for us because academia is critical within the ecosystem, and our work impacts strengthening the ecosystem as well academia is critical, but also R&D research is critical to innovation within the entrepreneurship space, to drive innovation. So thank you again, and I look forward to contributing to this cluster. And
Thank you.
congratulations on the launch.
I mean, I didn't want.
Are you hearing me?
Hearing you
Yes, we
clearly.
are.
Oh, good. Okay. Yes. Congratulations. This is exciting for me to be part of the launch and part of the cluster. I am Ayana Young Marshall, and I have been involved in business development for almost 30 years. I'm an attorney, and I have studied at all of the campuses except for the global campus. And therefore, I think that I was on campus with Knife at Mona. But
Hey.
at UE, I am the lecturer in international business, and I'm the coordinator of SEED, which is the Student Entrepreneurial Empowerment Development. It's a small business development center that is based at the Cayfield campus. There's a network in Barbados of the small business development centers, and we have been approved as one. SEED is a co-curricular course, and we run business, but we do the usual things that a small business development center would do. And we just last Wednesday, we held our 10th business, our 10th business plan competition, which is funded by the CIBC. And out of that competition, businesses have been able to start and expand with grant financing. Modest sums, but they have mostly made successes of their businesses. I am one of the persons that is a practitioner that is going to be relying on you to assist me with more research. But as you can imagine, there is a lot of data, a lot of experiences and application that we can, marry.
Exactly.
But I have looked at the entrepreneurial intentions of students. I have also looked at, we are writing a number of case studies, and we have been approached. So I'm grateful for the cluster, because I don't want us to, kind of duplicate, so that if in the case studies that are being currently written, I don't want us to end up, duplicating focus and so on. I am open to mentorship. Knife has played a role in that respect in a way. And one of the biggest things that we need to do out of the program, I'm glad he's there to because when he was in Barbados, he was prompting us about the importance of impact studies of our program. So we have not done that. We have just started to look at a tracer study in terms of all of the entrepreneurs, but we are not yet able to say what the economic impact, the social impact, and all these things are. So, and that's a big gap. So I'm excited. Congratulations, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be part of the cluster and kind of forcing the work that needs to be done based on the expansive work in entrepreneurship development that we have been doing. I'm pleased that there's that emphasis on corporate entrepreneurship, because not only have we been involved in the startup and the expansion of businesses, but when I look around, following the intervention of my colleague, Dr. Knife, and we looked around campus, invariably graduates of SEED are part of the most entrepreneurial departments on campus. So our work is being, emphasized and so on. So thank you very much. I won't talk anymore, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I just want to express my congratulations on the launch of the cluster. I think it's really a fantastic initiative to drive entrepreneurship forward in all these spheres that you mentioned. I'm a lecturer in entrepreneurship at the St. Augustine campus, Department of Management Studies. And, over the years, we have been, lecturing students and trying to push them, towards commercializing some of their business ideas. But, it is a challenge. So I'm hoping some of the research that emanates from our cluster can help support student entrepreneurs, staff entrepreneurs, and sort of make commercialization a reality across the campuses. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dixon.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edward Dixon. I also want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues about the importance of a cluster such as this one. I am a lecturer at the Five Islands campus in Antigua and Barbuda, where I teach entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and other business-related subjects. My research interest kind of sits at the intersection between the private sector and the public sector as well. So I am interested in philanthropy, social entrepreneurship, and also have some interest in understanding motivation of students, particularly tertiary students who are, well, a part of entrepreneurship courses and so on. So that thread I've been hearing about, the entrepreneurship intentions and motivation, is something that I'm interested in as well. But I'm also interested in the pedagogy side. So entrepreneurship education and how we transfer this knowledge to whether it be primary, secondary, or even tertiary students as well. So again, thanks for the invitation to being a part of the cluster, and looking forward to the work that we'll do as a team. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Naif.
All right, let me just start by thanking Indiana and the team for the launch of the cluster, and just to say that this has been something which was in my head for about 15 years. When we just started to design the degree programs at UWI, and we established the Office of Social Entrepreneurship then, where our primary focus was looking at social entrepreneurship, given that we see ourselves as Marcus Garvey movement scholars. So we'll use Marcus Garvey model as a benchmark, as a disruptor in the early 1900s. So look at how we create meaningful systems that support and endogenize growth through the MSME sector. Yes, and a lot of work has been done, as Indiana mentioned, in Jamaica over the last 15 years. We have developed a number of templates, more than 15 templates, about 5 different indices that are used to empiricize the work in the sector itself. Governance indices, mainstreaming indices, policy indices, indices that measure effectively are in terms of creating value, and of course, impact measurement indices like SROI. What we're currently doing now is to get funding to ensure that these tools are in a very user-friendly way, that we can allow any member of the sector to use the data so there's consistency in the tools and the data how it is gathered, and so how we can actually do research in the region will be bolstered through the application of those tools. We continue to partner with people all across the region. That's why the cluster is so useful in Indiana. Because if you look at the platform, where our colleagues with Ayan and with Marcia, all of us have known each other for more than 15, 20 years. We have worked with the Youth Business Trust across the region as well. And we'll continue to do research work, but not only just research work, but a lot of capacity building, a lot of program development and implementation as well. So the cluster itself was a part of where we think we need to go, not only as a center, but as a region. It is good that that is finally happening, because we had seeds in Barbados, we had CETP and Mona School of Business of Management in Jamaica. St. Augustine, we had Priscilla from St. Augustine and Ambika, but we know that we needed to have something that would anchor in the university, because it is a tripartite institution. And so the launching of a cluster in Trinidad, I think in St. Augustine, actually creates an anchor in all 3 campuses across, for UWI, which allows us to collaborate and do some significant work. So the objective is to share all the tools that we have developed, all the research we have developed, and see if we can aid others to reach and probably exceed where Jamaica is, because Jamaica has launched a social stock exchange, which of course India is a part of the team as well. We are now creating frameworks to clearly show how is that the social enterprises and MSMEs contribute to the GDP of the country, particularly social enterprises. You know, we are also finalizing legislation, which again, our team work on with ICL, Indiana, you and I work on that thing as well, to ensure that legislation is there to regularize and recognize social enterprises. So in essence, I think we have a large body of work that can be shared to accelerate the growth of the MSME and entrepreneurship space within the region.
Thanks, Naif. A huge body of work and legacy to build on as well. So we have some other members of our team, Mr. David Roberts, and of course, Ms. Colleen Davis. I'm going to ask them to just introduce themselves quickly.
Congratulate the team on the launch of the cluster. I'm David Roberts, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sport and Community Development in Trinidad and Tobago, combining over 2 decades of leadership experience with academic research. I'm currently pursuing a doctorate focusing on social entrepreneurship at the Toulouse Business School in France. And I'm really passionate about using entrepreneurship as a tool for community development and social change throughout the Caribbean. So I look forward to the work of the cluster.
Thank you, David. Colleen?
Thank you. Congratulations. I join my congratulations with everyone who's gone before me for the establishment of this cluster. I am from the civil society sector in Trinidad and Tobago with an organization called Vineyard Pond that's 20 plus years old. We were established to build institutional strength in the sector, and we greatly value collaboration. And personally, I've always dreamed of multi-sectoral collaboration. I've often thought of how being aligned with researchers could help drive policy that could impact, for example, the acts that legislate the work that civil society does. So currently the MPO Act that governs us since 2019 is not exactly the ideal act that we ourselves were thinking of, which would include the ability for civil society to be involved in social entrepreneurship. Vineyard Pond has been closely related to Ambika Medine since 2014, and we're part of SEEDS. And currently we are involved in a project with the Cropper Foundation. That is another example of multi-sectoral collaboration, looking at the legal and fiscal environment, as well as looking at the gaps in capacity that prevent civil society from operating in more professionally, going beyond the passion that we have for the issues that we sacrifice everything for, towards being able to be seen as healthy and trustworthy organizations that are accountable and compliant. So we are very, very excited about being part of the cluster, giving the a bit of the civil society lens to the research that's being done. And my hope is that one day in Trinidad and Tobago, we could actually boast as well of a social stock exchange where public and private sectors really appreciate the worth economically, socially, and otherwise that civil society brings to national development. So thanks again.
Thank you so much to all those who've spoken so far. And you get again a full sense of the breadth of the group that's here. As tends to happen, there are some of us who jump into meetings and begin meetings and we don't introduce ourselves properly or formally. I'm going to ask Dr. Bahal, Dr. Medine, and then I myself will introduce myself after they have gone. Go ahead, Dr. Bahal.
Yes, I will be brief in the interest of time. So my name is Priscilla Bahal, and I'm the co-chair of the cluster, and I'm from the St. Augustine campus. I consider myself to be an early career academic, but I have a burning passion for research and publication. And as Dr. Mintokwai said earlier, my niche area is really on unconventional entrepreneurs in commercial sense and sustainable entrepreneurship. I wish to highlight two of my colleagues who are here in the attendees in attendance today, Dr. Bedi Mak and Dr. Ayana Stevens. They're from the University of Commonwealth Caribbean and Halifax University in Canada. And we have produced a number of publications this year in youth entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship as it relates to poverty alleviation. So thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla. Ambika.
Hi, my name is Ambika Medin, and Indiana did a very good job early on with regards to saying who I was and the work that I have done. But I'm a senior lecturer at COSTAT, who does part-time work at the University of the West Indies. I'm also the Caribbean rep for the Academy of International Business in Latin America. And I did in fact speak, today was our monthly meeting, and I did introduce our cluster to the AIB, talking about potential opportunity for collaboration at that international level. So yeah, well, thank you very much. And I'm just grateful for this, what I'm seeing as my work has been gone beyond my imagination, and I'm really thankful for that.
Thank you, Ambika. And in the interest of time, Indiana Minto Koi, MSBM, UEMONA. We are almost at the point, but I want us to be able to open up for questions and comments. We have a website, and we also have an email address for you to reach out to. So I'm going to ask Priscilla just to show that. And in the meantime, if there are any questions, we invite questions, comments from the colleagues that are on the platform.
Thank you, Dr. Minto Koi. I see that there is a Lawrence Nicholson who's opened his mic. I'm not sure if he has a question.
Sorry. Well, I'm Lawrence Nicholson from the Mono campus, Mono School of Business and Management. I was trying to indicate by raising of hand.
Nice.
It will be quite remiss of me to say thank you to those who have engaged in this needed space for entrepreneurship. While I'm not in the core vortex of the research of entrepreneurship, I think I do some research that might consider be on the tangential or maybe on the periphery. And I would really like for us to continue to do research that will allow the convergence of the common thoughts which exist within the space of entrepreneurship. And so I really, really want to congratulate you on this. And one of the areas that I find to be a gap is that we do research, for example, in Jamaica, Barbados, elsewhere, but I'm not seeing enough convergence. That is to say, you do a piece of research in Jamaica, for example, I have done research in family-owned business and the interaction of women within the context of that. Just finished a piece of work on corner shops in Jamaica. I would love for that to now be expanded in the other Caribbean countries or within the Caribbean, especially and other places, just to find out the commonalities, because I really believe that we are more common than different. And out of that, we might just emerge to be the powerhouse that we are, and for others to recognize us. So again, congratulations to all.
May I just say something, Indiana?
Yes, go ahead,
what Lawrence has just mentioned, because I think that Lawrence's work is more crucial to what we're doing, that he sometimes says, because we are thinking about how do we mainstream the most vulnerable in the society, but also how do we endogenize growth. And Lawrence, your work on family-owned business was one of the earliest work that we recognize that being something that needs to be done regionally. I mean, we follow up on some work in terms of gender, and myself and Denzel, you know, and this work on corner shops, we're now speaking about nano enterprises, and those corner shops will be a part of the nano enterprises. And all that you have done in the past, or is a part of our national MSME policies in Jamaica. I know based on the work that Ayana was doing for their framework, it will also be a part of that framework. So your work is more central to what we are doing, Lawrence, than you actually think. And so as a cluster, we're looking forward to working closely with you to replicate some of those research in the other territories within the region.
Exactly. So that's the purpose. That's the purpose of having a regional group, Because one of the challenges we note is that there's sometimes a tendency to try to go it alone. And in that approach, we restrict ourselves. We don't get the comparative work that we can develop. And so we lose out in the end. Ultimately, I mean, when I go to conferences and I look at the conference booklets, I see a paper with multiple authors. I know there's a tendency in our region to try to go for single authorship. And that's good, but I mean, ultimately, no man is an island. And in order for us to have that wide scale impact, we need more collaboration. So that's exactly how, for instance, the work that you've done, Lawrence, on family-owned business can get to be replicated at a regional level to have that proper impact that we're talking about, and intensify the kind of work and the outcomes from the findings as well.
So Dr. Minto Coy, there, just for the benefit of those who might be listening and not reading through the chat, there's a question from a Michael Noel. Is there a plan to establish a database for work pertaining to resilience and entrepreneurship arising out of this cluster? Your response for those who are listening in?
Yes, we intend to. One of the things we're mindful of, I'm sure you would recognize that in our presentation today, we haven't said anything much about funding or research grants and so on, because a lot of the work that we've been doing so far, we've done it as individual researchers, which is the benefit of having a wide group like this as well. But we do intend to collect information that will build a more comprehensive view of the entrepreneurial ecosystem across the Caribbean. And as part of that, it will include us accessing data or collating data that will be available for others to utilize. So even in terms of the publications that we do have from the collaboration, we want to make those available. As much as we have to be mindful of the individual publishers' copyright agreements and so on, but we really do want to make the work available and accessible so others can utilize them. Essentially, we're here on this earth for a few years, right? And so none of us will be here forever. We want to make sure that the information we have, it doesn't reside with us, but there's a body of work that's left for whoever desires to access it. If it's the research methodologies that you want to get more insight into, we want to make those available so others can replicate our studies, ultimately enhancing the validity of our work.
And additionally, though, Indiana, I think what I've been doing, this is what I've been doing. We've been working a lot with the government. So for example, in Jamaica, through the Center and PIOJ, they're getting funding to support platforms that can actually archive big data, both them and the ministry. And it's the same thing we're pushing for in all the Caribbean territories, because data is a major gap in many of the different island states. We know that there's work going to be done in Barbados, and I know that work will be done in Trinidad, but other territories need to get that thing organized as well. And that is part of the reason we have tools being developed. You want to have tools that are being used across the region so you can have similarity in terms of how the data is collected and how the data is also managed. You know, but a lot of work is being done in that area. What we need to do though is to get a CDB on board to establish that Caribbean repository, you know, and that can be anchored in one of the institutions, maybe Mona, St. Augustine, or Caville, you know, but nationally as well. We need to ensure that through our work that the national policies and the relevant ministries start to put in place platforms to gather the data that can be made available to all persons who are researchers and practitioners within the region.
Yes, for sure, Naif. And it's interesting too, because it's in these settings that you get to hear of work that others have done, but we don't have access to it. So even in the chat now, we hear about a research that was done in 2011 on vendors in Halfway Tree. That's fantastic material, right? That we want to encourage through this network. I did note our publisher from Palgrave Macmillan, Marcus is here with us. We also have Arif Zaman, who's from the Bloomsbury Institute in London. And he's also with Commonwealth Institute, I think, in London as well. So we have a good team here, and ultimately, it will enhance the value of the work. I love, for instance, that even in this session today, you hear the different accents across the Caribbean, right? And again, that underscores what we're really attempting to do through this cluster. Thanks, Benita.
You're most welcome. So we're making a last call. If there are any questions from the audience, you don't feel like opening your mic, you could go ahead and drop it in the chat. And while you all are thinking, just to share that what we will do, there were over 100 persons who registered for the event this afternoon. So we will go ahead and share the contact information for the group with the wider list of registrants or group of registrants. And we will also share some contact information from those who've attended with you all as well. So if you want to further follow up or share any information with them directly, you can. The question I had is, are you, in as much as you're doing a launch and you're discussing the work that you're doing, are you inviting membership at this time? And if you are, you know, what sort of membership, how would persons, what would persons need to bring to the table for them to be added to the group?
Okay, Priscilla, do you want to take this or I go? So the short answer is yes, we are inviting membership.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, again, we want to broaden the reach. We want to broaden the amount of information that we can collect, because our intent is for this to be a regional effort. There's a gap in the region in research in the area. And so in order to fill that gap and to do so in a way which doesn't stress individuals too much, is to bring more people on board. So we invite you to come on board. Please, the email address is there. Do reach out to us. We are developing our terms of reference for the group, because again, it's a collaborative environment, but we want to make sure that the players in the environment understand the rules of the game and that we all work to build each other. And we have a website, Priscilla, our in-house IT specialist, has created a website that we hope to build out in the coming weeks. We want to make sure that we're able to represent each of our members on the website. And this is the medium as well that we'll use to collate information that we gather along the way. Because when our view is, when someone searches for entrepreneurship in the Caribbean, they should be able to come directly to this website. And it's there that we hope that they will then have access to a wealth of material, a wealth of different types of data that they can utilize for whatever purpose along the way.
So thanks for that. So Arif Zaman is asking if St. Kitts is involved. And Arif is from the Bloomsbury Institute of London.
Yes. So Arif, we through this launch and through our engagement, we're hoping that we'll be able to have representatives from every Caribbean island. I know you have a wealth of resource, so I'm suspecting that you have a contact you can give to us as well. And we invite that. If you know of someone who's doing research in the area that we could invite to join us, then I'm all for that as well.
Please go ahead, Arif. Need to unmute.
You're muted, Arif.
Oh, I think he got stuck though.
Oh, okay.
But he has put his contact information in the chat. I'm just we'll give him a moment to see if he's. You might have to keep your camera off and try to just unmute and speak. Other way around.
Indeed, it might be useful then, you know, to speak to the sister in Barbados, and Marcia will know a person who's in charge of the Youth Business Trust, because she has a whole network among the different Eastern Caribbean territories as well. And I've been driving this thing of social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship amongst youth. And so you want some of those practitioners to be a part of the cluster. I think this ecosystem within the region is broader and deeper than we might think. And again, based on the amount of work we have done, I think we have so much to share and really growing this ecosystem along with some of the support from people like Arif will be quite excited, you know. So when you mentioned there's a gap, I want to use the language that there are major opportunities here in the Caribbean to advance the sector. Where we see these gaps, it means that's an opportunity to partner to get this thing going. And Arif Mike seems to be working now, so let him come.
For sure,
My-
for sure.
yeah,
and
my-
sorry, go ahead.
My
Aaron.
apologies. Yeah, my apologies. No, I was just trying to say on a couple of things. One is so I'm based, as Indiana knows, in London, Bloomsbury Institute, but I'm also very actively involved in various Commonwealth entrepreneur networks, particularly involving women and young people. And there's been quite a lot that's been happening in the Commonwealth space, which I think is relevant to your discussion. I'll give 3 quick examples. There's been work around youth entrepreneurship coming out of the youth ministers meeting that was held in London a few months ago. There's been a lot of work around social entrepreneurship as well. There's also work around the creative industries. I just had a meeting a few hours ago in London with the High Commissioner to the UK for St Kitts and Nevis, Kevin Isaac, and he actually co-chairs a major Commonwealth initiative with the UK government on investment, particularly investment into small states in the Commonwealth, including, of course, in the Caribbean. That's obviously a link to be made with entrepreneurship ecosystems. So there's a lot that's going on that I think as you grow and develop this. The other point, just to say finally, is perhaps the obvious one, but I think it's worth making the link to the Association of Commonwealth Universities that UE is a member of, and others. I'm involved in a working group there on employability and entrepreneurship, and that obviously makes a link with skills and employment as well. So I'll leave it there. But I think Indiana, as usual, Indiana, you're pioneering and driving, but also involving so many great stakeholders along the way. So great to see more about this. Thanks so much.
Thanks for that, Arif. Arif, he barely said anything much about himself, but he's also doing work looking at diaspora entrepreneurship as well. So he's here in his own right as a researcher as well.
So thanks for your contributions there. I have, is it Dr. Mack?
Yes.
As we take our last few comments.
All right, so I'll just share some brief comments. I want to say thanks for having invited me to the session. I want to congratulate the team because I think when I started first talking to Priscilla, when I came to Canada, I told her the fact that we must collaborate as Caribbean scholars. Oftentimes we work alone. In our region, we tend to be silos. So I kind of glad for this aspect, and I would long for that repository where we could find all the data, because oftentimes as Caribbean scholars, it's hard to find research in the Caribbean context. And because we starve for resources in the developed world, you have access to so many journals, repositories, so many different things you have access to. But I just want to commend the team on this initiative, and as you go from strength to strength, build on it and really try to get the word out and really try to highlight what's being done, you know, because there's so much being done, but we can't really get access to it. So thanks for this initiative, and all the best to everyone.
Thank you.
Just to add, Dr. Abede, Mac and I, we have already started conversations about doing an experimental design study with students from his Canadian university and comparing that with that of our students here in the Caribbean. Thank you.
So we will, sorry, Tennille. So the research agenda is there. So we can share the slides, but we ask you as well to reach out to us, areas that you're interested in. We can build research projects around those. Even some of the work that Priscilla just mentioned, and sorry, I've reverted to first names, it's far more comfortable and easier. But once we have the methodologies and so on developed, we want to be able to reach out to different persons across the membership and ask if they want to collaborate with us in data collection and therefore in publications as well. as Dr. Matt mentioned, Abedi, the reality is there's a lot, and Knife said it as well. There's a lot that's going on, but it tends to be in pockets, in silos somewhere that nobody else knows about except the people who are doing it. And we want to get beyond that. There's no strength in the work being hidden. There's no value, no growth to be had from individuals being entrepreneurial and running off and doing it on themselves. We actually need for there to be more collaboration, and in the collaboration, more documentation so the work can be accessible. And that's the final thing from me. Thank you.
So thanks again. And let me just do one last check in the, right, okay. I puts a link in the chat. So again, as promised, I will send two-way communications, make sure that everybody's connected coming out of this discussion. And there certainly is an opportunity perhaps for you to have follow-up sessions to further expand your networks, to share more information and more insights and so on. We acknowledge that there's quite a lot of work that the cluster has done, as demonstrated in your presentation, and there is very specific targeted work that you've planned for the time ahead, the year to 3 years and so on. So we'll wrap up this afternoon by saying thank you very much. Thank you to the PVC for reaching out to the campuses to ask for these persons to come forward for us to be able to establish 1 UV clusters. Thank you, of course, to our office at the School for Graduate Studies and Research, all the persons who go and help to make something like this happen, as simple as it is. There's a bit of work that has to happen in the background. Thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to Dr. Minto Coy and all of her members. You have quite a robust group of persons who've come together here. I see you already really engaged and exchanging ideas. And last but not least, thank you very much to our invited guests. We hope that you've enjoyed the discourse. We hope that you will stay in touch if you're interested in stay in touch with the research cluster, that if you're interested in being members, that you do go ahead and make that connection. And we look forward to having and hosting further sessions and events with this Resilience Through Entrepreneurship Research Cluster. So that's it from us. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic evening, and we look forward to being in touch in the future.
Thank you, Tennille.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Indiana, did you want to speak to Priscilla and I, or are you good?
We can do a WhatsApp call. Or Priscilla, if we could go on your link.
On Priscilla's link? All right, not a problem. Okay.
Take care, everyone. Thanks again.
Take care, everyone. I'll end the meeting now.